46. Now, something tells me that we have used these properties before, but we didn't use them with multiplication. We used them with addition. How is addition similar to multiplication? Alexis. Okay, there's adding in both, absolutely. Any other ways? Yeah, Casper. Okay. Yeah, it's a shortcut. Multiplication can be viewed as a shortcut, especially once you get up there in numbers. It sure is easier to multiply by 6 than it is to add the same number 6 times. Okay? Desriana. Yeah, usually the answer, whether it be the sum or the product, is larger than what you started with, right? Okay, very good. Not always the case, but at least when we multiply with whole numbers, right? Okay, decimals, not always the case, but well, let's look at some of these properties. Commutative property. Commutative property. Changing the order of factors does not change the product. For example, A times B is the same as B times A. 3 times 20 is the same as 20 times 3. Okay? Very similar to addition, because just like with addition, it doesn't necessarily matter what order I decide to add with the two of the, when there's just two. Same thing with multiplication. When I just have two factors, it doesn't really matter what order I decide to take them. Sometimes it's just a matter of personal preference. What looks better to you, what looks easier for you to work with. Okay? Any questions on the commutative property? Commutative is usually associated with just two factors. Okay? The associative property. Usually when you're working with 3 or more factors, it requires grouping. For example, if I have an A and a B and a C, okay, it doesn't matter how I decide to group them, or in other words, which two of the factors I want to multiply first. When multiplying more than two factors, you can only multiply 2 at a time anyway. Associative property says it doesn't necessarily matter which 2 you decide to do first, as long as you end up doing all of them at some time. Then why might you choose? Then why might there be some to choose from? Again, might be a matter of personal preference. Might be something that looks easier to you. And we'll get to some of those cases through the examples. Any questions about the associative grouping? Identity. We had identity property. And we talked about an ID, right? You pull your driver's license out of your wallet, out of your purse, whatever. And what does it say? It tells you who you are. It's got your picture on there. It's got your physical description on there, your address. But when I use identity property with addition, what was the magic number? Anytime I add a number to this, it stays the same. Do you remember what that was with addition, Dasan? 0. But is that going to work with multiplication? No. So anytime you take a number and you multiply it by what, it's going to stay the same. Not 0. Yes, 1. Identity property. Anytime you multiply a factor times 1, it's going to stay the same. Okay? That's the identity. The identity stays the same. But just that slight difference with multiplication and addition with the identity. And there's one more, and that happens, actually there's two more. 0 property. Zero property says anytime I multiply a factor times 0, what do I get? Say 0. Okay. So they do make room for the use of 0 in these properties because of the effect that it has. It's just called 0 property, not identity. Any questions on commutative, associative, identity, or 0 property? No? Okay. Well, good, because the next one is usually a lesson in and of itself. Distributive property. It's the big one. Now listen as I read the definition. The product of a factor and a sum or difference equals the sum or difference of the products. What? The product of a factor and a sum or difference equals the sum or difference of the products. Well, based on the definition, without seeing anything, it's a little bit difficult, a little wordy. So if we had A and we multiplied it to a B plus a C, it would be equal to A times B plus A times C. Now just take a minute to write that down, get that in your notes, chew on that for a second, and then we'll try our best to digest it using some real examples. All these properties serve as tools for us that we can use to make the work a little bit easier to do in our head. The distributive property, it does that as well. However, some students don't want to use it. They feel it's too difficult, they feel it's too hard. But you would be wise to learn how to do this. Single-digit numbers. Someone give me a single-digit number for A, besides 1, besides 0. Give me a single-digit number. Yes, 9. Single-digit number for B, 3. And a single-digit number for C, Carlos, 2. Okay. All right. Distributive property says, I've got this factor. I'm going to multiply it to, in this case, is this going to be a sum or a difference? It's going to be a sum or a difference. It's going to be a sum because the parentheses around it say That order of operations says I should do that first. So I'm not necessarily multiplying by 3 or 2. I'm multiplying by what? Total. From the inside the parentheses. 5. That's the sum. That's the answer when I add the 3 and the 2. Now the short way is this. They say, okay, I'm going to take this 9. I'm going to multiply it to my b. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say 9 times 3. And I'm going to add it to the same 9 times the 2. Split it up. Just bear with me. I use these numbers just to kind of show you. Maybe it would be easier to see without A, B, and C. Now, what we've illustrated probably makes life a little more difficult, but I'm going to show you a way in which it makes it a lot easier. What is 9 times 3? And then we add it to 18. 27 plus 18 is 45. Let's go back to the beginning. What is 9 times 5? If I were to add the 3 and the 2 inside the parentheses, would that also give me 45? So they are equal. They are equal if I split those up on the inside. Yes? Well, let's test a couple. Let's try a couple. Let's use the property. I mean, there's only one way to find out. And the work probably won't ask you to get that detailed today, but we're here, we're talking about it, so why not? We are now going to be able to look at a problem like this and do a lot of the work in our head. Go ahead, write it down. We'll be able to look at a problem like 7 times 63 and be able to do a lot of that work in our head. I'll show you how. We're going to use the distributive property. I'm going to keep that 7. I'm going to make that 7 my A. I'm going to keep that one on the outside. How do you want to break up the 63? I can make the 63 into an addition problem where if I added two numbers together, I would get 63. What would logically make sense and be easiest for us to do in our head? Larissa? Why did you say 60 plus 3? You're absolutely correct, but why? Yeah, it's an easy way to add it, and it's an even easier way to multiply. So let's take the 7, and we're going to multiply it to the 60. Then since I'm adding, I'm going to take that same 7 and multiply it to the 3. Right? It's going to be 63. It should be. Now what? What's 7 times 6? 42 with the 0 is. And what's 7 times 3? What's 420 plus 21? Do we not do a majority of that work in our head? It's a tool that can be used. Is it a little bit tricky to get the hang of it first? Maybe. Not if you understand what it is you're doing. What's that one on your own? Sure you do. Five times 91. Okay, now between the 5 and the 91, which of those numbers are easier for you to work with multiplication-wise? Should be a no-brainer here. Yes? Between the 5 and the 91, which one is easier to work with? 5. So that's the one I'm going to put on the outside. And then, Mariah, what's a logical way to break up the 91? You say 90 plus 1. Okay? So distributive property says I'm going to take that number on the outside. I'm going to multiply it to the first number in the parentheses. Since I'm adding, I will add whatever I get there to the number on the outside times the second 5 times 9? 45 with a 0? 450? And 5 times 1 equals not so bad. It's not. What did you do? Oh, 80 plus 11. Fancy. Well, 80 plus 11 still gives you 91. Doesn't matter, really honestly, it doesn't matter what you decide you're going to use in there as long as when you add it together, you get the 91. Just 90 plus 1 is probably easiest. Okay? All right, now, can you control? Okay. So really what you want to do is focus on what you know, focus on what you have, find out what's missing. So, Alexis, 30 is our missing value. Oops, I forgot the number, so I don't want to confuse you. And what property was used? Leah, associative. Be really careful how you decide you're going to abbreviate associative. It's probably better. If you're going to abbreviate associative, don't use the traditional first 3 letters. Okay? Okay? Try number 2. That was 1. Try number 2 for me. How do I identify the missing value and then what property was it? Okay. What you also want to look for are differences within the properties. I overheard some of you already saying, I don't get this one, I don't know this one. You have addition present over here, okay? Are there any other properties that we talked about today that there was any addition in besides one of the properties? It was the only property that we saw today that had any addition symbols in it at all. Carlos. Distributive. So here, knowing what you know, the outside times the first plus the outside times the second. We have the outside times the second. We don't have the outside times the first, which would be 65 is our missing value, and that's the distributive property. How about number 3? 785 times something equals 785. Yes. 1. And what property is that? Identity. Okay? And we said the missing value is 24. What property did you use to find that missing value? Yes? Not commutative. Commutative really only starts with the 2. I've got 3 right off the bat. Yes? I would say you could use identity or associative. Either one of those would be acceptable. Now, there might not be multiple possibilities for properties on all of them, but for some of them, there's a little bit of crossover. So Look at them carefully, okay? Numbers 5 through 10. Numbers 5 through 10. Evaluate each expression given that P is equal to 4.5, Q is equal to 12, and S is equal to 20. Let's hold off on that portion. Let's do this. I'm going to assign for you the worksheet 2-6, and that's just 1 through 4. And then also page 47, numbers 8 through 11. Okay? Now, the workload isn't heavy. It's not a lot. So you should be able to have time to focus and concentrate and get them right.